The assassin thought he had chosen an easy target. A man on stage, a wealthy philanthropist with no visible protection. Thousands of people watching, cameras rolling. The perfect opportunity. The plan was simple. One bullet, clean escape. Job done. But there was one thing he didn't know. That man had once served 12 years in MI6, and some skills never fade away. The Royal Opera House in London, famous for its elegance and acoustics, was hosting a charity gala. 3,000 guests filled the hall. Aristocrats, investors, celebrities. The evening's central figure was Sir Edward Whitmore, age 45, a celebrated businessman who had donated over £100 million to children's charities. To the media, he was the perfect philanthropist. Handsome, successful, generous, but that was only half the truth. The other half remained hidden. Edward Whitmore never shared his past with anyone. 20 years ago, his life had belonged to another world, one of shadows and danger. He still carried traces of it. The way he checked exits upon entering a room, the way he avoided sitting with his back exposed, the way his eyes scanned every crowd for patterns others never noticed. Up in the balcony, third row, left side, the assassin waited. Inside his bag lay a disassembled sniper rifle. Cutting-edge technology, lightweight, silent. For 3 days, he had followed Whitmore's routines, his morning runs, his business meetings, his calm entrances without bodyguards. To the assassin, this meant vulnerability. No escorts, no visible protection, no security cordon. It was a question worth asking, why wouldn't such a man be guarded? But he didn't care for answers. All that mattered was the task. Assemble, shoot, escape, collect his fee. The lights dimmed, a spotlight cut across the ornate stage. The presenter began his introduction, and the audience applauded. The assassin opened his bag, carefully assembling the weapon. Each motion was practiced, rehearsed, professional. By the time Sir Edward reached the microphone, everything would be ready. Backstage, Sir Edward adjusted his dinner jacket and checked his watch. Outwardly calm, inwardly alert. His eyes moved constantly, scanning shadows, mapping escape routes, calculating blind spots. These weren't conscious acts anymore, but reflexes ingrained by years of intelligence work. Tonight, something felt wrong. His instincts, the same ones that had kept him alive across Eastern Europe and the Middle East, were warning him. He couldn't see why, but his body was already bracing for danger. The presenter called his name. Applause echoed across the hall as Sir Edward walked onto the stage. His smile was perfect, his posture confident, but his mind was processing. Threat assessment, tactical awareness, situational mapping. To the audience, he was just another philanthropist about to deliver a speech. To himself, he was a man entering a potential battlefield. The assassin raised the rifle. Through the scope, the target stood clear, well lit, unmoving, a flawless shot. Distance perfect, wind zero. He steadied his breath, finger on trigger. In 3 seconds, the contract would be complete. Sir Edward reached the microphone. His eyes swept the hall. Years of surveillance training allowed him to notice things most would miss. A flicker of metal in the balcony, movement that didn't match audience behavior. Something abnormal. His instincts screamed the truth. In an instant, he moved. One sharp dive away from the microphone, hitting the stage floor just as the rifle fired. The shot pierced the air, passing through the spot where his chest had been seconds earlier. The audience gasped, confusion turning to panic. Chaos erupted. People screamed, chairs overturned, guests rushed toward exits. But Sir Edward wasn't panicking. His mind calculated trajectory and pinpointed the shooter's position. Balcony, third row, left side. Security staff froze in confusion, unprepared for a sniper. Sir Edward's voice cut through the noise, calm yet commanding, directing guards toward positions, ordering crowd control, assigning cover. The assassin was stunned. The man on stage wasn't behaving like a civilian. His evasive movements, The speed of his reaction, the precision of his commands, all of it screamed military training. He chambered another round, but his target was no longer still. Sir Edward moved strategically, using stage decor as cover, while coordinating security. The audience was panicked, stampeding toward exits. Sir Edward seized the microphone again, his voice steady, authoritative. He instructed the crowd on which exits to use, guiding flow to prevent trampling. People instinctively obeyed, authority under fire that was something no businessman could fake. Reporters at the back recorded everything. Their cameras caught the transformation. The philanthropist was now acting like a field commander. Later, this footage would spark endless debate. From her live broadcast booth, BBC correspondent Sarah Fleming whispered what many were already thinking. This isn't the behavior of an ordinary man. This is military precision. The truth of Sir Edward Whitmore was beginning to surface. But in that moment, with chaos all around, only one thing mattered: survival. Sir Edward's eyes locked onto the subtle movement in the balcony. To an ordinary observer, it would have gone unnoticed. But he was far from ordinary. 12 years of MI6 training had refined his senses and honed his reflexes to a level few could comprehend. Every muscle, every nerve, every instinct was poised for moments exactly like this. Adrenaline surged through him, precise and controlled. Above the hall, the assassin peered through his scope, finger poised on the trigger, breath held. The target was perfectly visible, illuminated by the stage lights. Distance ideal, wind factor 0. 3 seconds, and the contract would be complete. Confidence crept across the assassin's face as he prepared to squeeze the trigger. Then, in a fraction of a heartbeat, Sir Edward moved. A dive sideways from the microphone, hitting the stage floor with fluid precision. The bullet whistled past the spot he had just vacated. The hall erupted in pandemonium. Screams pierced the air. Chairs toppled. Guests scattered toward exits. Chaos had arrived, but Sir Edward remained composed, his mind calculating trajectories and angles, pinpointing the assassin's exact location. Security personnel froze, overwhelmed. Standard training had not prepared them for a sniper in a grand hall filled with civilians. Yet Edward began issuing instructions, his voice calm and authoritative. He directed positions, angles, evacuation routes, clear, concise commands that carried weight far beyond what any ordinary businessman could command. The assassin, realizing his plan had unraveled, tensed. The target wasn't flustered. Every evasive movement, every instruction, every subtle use of cover indicated professional training. Stage decor became shields. Steps became tactical repositioning. The sniper considered a second shot, but his target was no longer a stationary mark. Precision now required impossibly fast calculation. Sir Edward continued coordinating security teams with meticulous attention. Guards were repositioned, communication lines established, exit routes secured. Meanwhile, the panicked crowd moved under his guidance, following every instruction instinctively. His authority imposed order amid chaos, preventing stampedes and minimizing injury. Civilians obeyed without question, sensing his command and trustworthiness. Reporters at the back of the hall recorded the scene in disbelief. Cameras captured what seemed impossible: the philanthropist orchestrating tactical operations in real time. Observers noted his positioning, terminology, timing, and poise traits learned in high-risk theaters of operation, not boardrooms or charity events. Detective Inspector James Morrison, a veteran with 20 years in the Metropolitan Police and counter-terrorism experience, instinctively recognized the caliber of command. Orders were precise, prioritization flawless, and stress management beyond standard protocol. Even he, seasoned in crisis response, was stunned. The assassin's confidence waned further. His target moved, always aware, using cover and directing security, while civilians were protected and chaos contained. Any attempt at another shot risked immediate detection and capture. The man on stage was not just a businessman, he was a highly trained operative, and every motion betrayed it. Meanwhile, Social media and live media feeds captured every detail. Clips circulated rapidly, viewers fascinated by the transformation unfolding before their eyes. How could one man simultaneously manage his safety, command security, and coordinate civilian movement with such unerring skill? The answer seemed clear to those paying attention. This was no ordinary man. Sir Edward repositioned behind the stage, his mind mapping the sniper's likely locations, planning every contingency. Security personnel flanked him, shields raised, radios crackling. Orders flowed seamlessly, precise and professional. The entire hall now operated under his direction, his presence transforming panic into organized evacuation. By the time the first moments of chaos began to stabilize, the assassin realized the gravity of the situation. He was facing a man whose entire life had prepared him for such scenarios. Body language, command presence, quick decision-making, environmental awareness, every facet confirmed military-grade training. Questions raced through the sniper's mind. Who exactly was this man? How could he anticipate every move? And while the audience below remained mostly oblivious to the deadly interplay above, the truth was undeniable. Sir Edward Whitmore, esteemed philanthropist and public figure, harbored a past that went far beyond business acumen. Hidden within his composed exterior was a mastery born of danger, discipline, and covert operations. If you are following this story, don't forget to like the video and share in the comments which city you're watching from. The next moments will reveal even more astonishing details about Sir Edward's capabilities. Sir Edward was lying behind the stage, directing security personnel with precise calm. He had already calculated the assassin's exact position: balcony, third row, left side, second seat. An ordinary person could never have possessed such accurate data. Years of training, pattern recognition, and operational experience gave him this edge. The head of security watched in astonishment. The level of detail, the terminology, the tactical approach, everything suggested a professional operator. Each instruction Sir Edward gave was deliberate. Angles of approach, coordination of teams, potential escape routes. He was no longer the public philanthropist. He was a commanding presence on the field. The assassin, realizing the target's awareness, made a decision. He disassembled his weapon and began to move, intending to escape. Confidence had left his hands, but Sir Edward had anticipated this too. Every exit had been sealed by his subtle pre-instructions to the security team. The sniper was being trapped, and the plan was unfolding perfectly. This was no coincidence. Meanwhile, the media had recorded everything. Cameras captured the calm, professional coordination, the authoritative presence. Reporters whispered among themselves. This wasn't the behavior of a civilian, nor someone who had only lived in boardrooms. Questions began forming. Who was Sir Edward really? What had trained him to act with such precision under stress? The panic in the hall slowly subsided. Sir Edward's instructions had guided evacuation in an orderly fashion. People were leaving safely, a stark contrast to the initial chaos. Every measure he had taken reflected not only his tactical knowledge, but his foresight, developed over decades. When the assassin finally reached what he thought was an exit, he was intercepted. Security searched his bag and discovered the disassembled weapon. Realization hit him he was caught. Yet in his mind, curiosity lingered. Who exactly was Sir Edward Whitmore? The question swirled as he was restrained. Sir Edward began to normalize on stage. He adjusted his dinner jacket, combed his hair, and returned to his calm public persona. Yet beneath the surface, his body remained alert, muscles still ready for sudden action. Habits ingrained over a lifetime in high-risk environments could not be switched off. Reporters swarmed, firing questions rapidly. How had he stayed so calm? How did he know exactly what to do? Each question chipped at the carefully maintained public image, revealing inconsistencies in the story the world believed. Sir Edward answered with practiced neutrality. Instinct, luck, reaction. Journalists were unconvinced. Too many details didn't add up. Social media erupted. Millions watched the incident unfold in real time. Clips went viral. Comments flooded in. This man was too precise, too organized, too prepared. Observers speculated endlessly about his background, his skills, his hidden history. Outside, Westminster Bridge was cordoned off by the Metropolitan Police. Commissioner Helen Davies arrived personally, recognizing this was no ordinary incident. The precision of the assassination attempt, paired with the target's flawless response, suggested someone of exceptional training and intelligence. Sir Edward returned to his Mayfair residence later that night, reflecting on the day's events. He had hidden his true identity for 20 years, but the attempted assassination had exposed a fraction of it. Investigations would follow. Questions would be asked. Curiosity had been ignited. The next morning, newspapers splashed his image across their front pages. Headlines teased the story. A calm, composed philanthropist orchestrating crowd safety amid a deadly threat. Analysts and military experts were consulted on live television, all concluding the same. This man had received professional training far beyond ordinary civilian knowledge. Internet forums buzzed with speculation. Who was Sir Edward Whitmore? What was his true identity? Every detail of his behavior, his posture, his tactical commands was scrutinized. Sir Edward monitored the developments quietly, aware of the attention he had drawn. His secret identity teetered on exposure. Perhaps it was time to disappear, to shed the public persona entirely. Meanwhile, MI5's counterintelligence division had opened a file. Whenever a civilian displays operational knowledge during a public incident, automatic protocols are triggered. Director General Patricia Thornton personally requested a top priority review of Sir Edward's background. The precision, the command, the strategic coordination, everything pointed to someone who had been trained in the highest levels of intelligence operations. The world was watching, the file was growing, and Sir Edward knew that the next moves would be critical, both for his safety and for the protection of the life he had carefully constructed. 3 days later, an unexpected visitor arrived at Sir Edward's residence. The man wore civilian clothes, but his posture and demeanor betrayed military discipline. Introducing himself as the Deputy Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, he stated he had matters requiring immediate discussion. Sir Edward welcomed him inside. He had anticipated this moment, the confrontation he had prepared for over many years. The Deputy Commissioner wasted no time. The events at the gala, his calm command, and professional response to the assassination attempt did not align with any civilian behavior. He had displayed expertise far beyond normal expectations. Official records were scrutinized. Sir Edward's history appeared remarkably clean, almost too clean an anomaly in itself. Previous traces had been deliberately erased, a task requiring extraordinary skill. Questions followed rapidly. Which organization had he worked for 20 years ago? What were his past relationships and affiliations? Where had he received such specialized training? And how had he amassed his fortune? Sir Edward answered cautiously, providing measured and factual replies. The Deputy Commissioner observed him closely. Every gesture, every glance was analyzed for deception. His body language was studied, his responses scrutinized, but Sir Edward was accustomed to such evaluations. This was not the first time he had faced interrogation under pressure. Their conversation lasted 2 hours. When the Deputy Commissioner departed, he left a business card and a subtle warning. He could call if necessary, but his eyes suggested the matter was far from resolved. That evening, Sir Edward made a decisive choice. Remaining in the city had become too dangerous. The attention his skills and actions had drawn was now unavoidable. The need to change identity and relocate had become urgent. The next morning, Sir Edward initiated the process. Banks were contacted, accounts closed, funds transferred. Properties were placed on the market, and a rapid liquidation plan commenced. All steps were executed with professional precision. The media monitored every development. Sir Edward's sudden disappearance sparked new speculations. Why was he leaving? What was he hiding? Journalists positioned themselves outside his residence, hoping for interviews, seeking explanations, yet he refused to emerge. Online investigators began piecing together fragments of his past. Photographs, documents, and old records were examined meticulously. Clues were scarce, but subtle details emerged. Posture, hand positioning, and visual awareness consistent with military training. A technology expert conducted voice analysis from the night of the assassination attempt. Tone, cadence, and word choice revealed a disciplined vocal pattern, consistent with command training under high-stress conditions. Cheltenham's GCHQ analyzed the data further, matching speech patterns to their classified databases. Results indicated alignment with Hereford training protocols, typically reserved for Special Air Service personnel. The evidence left no doubt. Sir Edward had undergone elite commando training. The public remained unaware, but official files at Scotland Yard were expanding rapidly. A special investigation team was formed, reviewing top-secret archives for any trace of his previous career. The first breakthrough came from an old newspaper report, dated 22 years prior. It mentioned an intelligence service officer's promotion. Though the photograph was blurry, facial features were identifiable, and they matched Sir Edward. This discovery clarified the picture. His true identity, previous rank, and duty stations began to emerge. Highly classified, but verifiable through cross-referencing personnel records. The Deputy Commissioner absorbed the implications. He was dealing with a former high-ranking intelligence officer, experienced, disciplined, and potentially dangerous. Sir Edward, however, seemed a step ahead. That night, he vanished from his Mayfair home. No signs of departure, no traces left behind, only an empty residence remained. Whitehall's secure databases confirmed his background. Colonel Marcus Ashford, former SAS officer, later seconded to MI6 Special Operations Executive. His last mission remained classified at the highest levels, followed by immediate resignation and a full identity erasure privileges reserved for officers whose lives remained under permanent threat. The world believed Sir Edward Whitmore was gone. But Colonel Ashford, trained for shadows and concealment, had merely stepped into another life. 6 months had passed. Colonel Marcus Ashford, now living under the alias William Thompson, had established a completely new life in a different city. No luxury, no public recognition. A middle-class existence designed to remain unnoticed. Yet, habits formed over decades remained. Every morning, he read newspapers, tracked the news, and scanned for any trace of the Sir Edward Whitmore case, aware that the world might still be watching. The media had moved on. Headlines had shifted to new stories, leaving the mysterious millionaire philanthropist largely forgotten. Yet at Scotland Yard, the investigation remained active. Files documenting his true identity had grown thicker. Colonel Ashford's history, highly classified and meticulously concealed, revealed him as a former intelligence officer, a man who had operated in high-risk theaters across the globe. The details of his final missions were particularly intriguing. Operations connected to terrorist organizations had been executed successfully, but his retirement had followed immediately, raising questions. Why abandon the field at the peak of expertise? Was it the realization that his life was in constant danger? Or had the weight of classified knowledge demanded a complete disappearance? In Manchester, William Thompson led a quiet life. Neighbors found him polite, hardworking, reliable. Yet at night, the echoes of past operations haunted him. Skills and experiences could not be erased, and the memories of danger, precision, and survival intruded into his dreams. He had changed identity, but the mind of a former operative could not fully rest. One afternoon, while shopping at Tesco, he caught sight of a familiar face on a television broadcast. A former colleague from his operations had passed away. The images stirred memories of long-past missions. In photographs from those days, a young Marcus Ashford stood proudly in uniform, unaware that those moments would one day be relegated to history. The store manager noticed William's lingering attention on the screen. He inquired about his interest in military news. William smiled, giving a nonchalant answer. A bit of past military service. The words were casual, but the mind behind them remained vigilant. Walking home, he reflected. Could he ever reveal his true identity? Perhaps never. William Thompson would remain the public face, while the man beneath Colonel Ashford continued to observe, assess, and plan in silence. And yet, this new life, stripped of grandeur and exposure, offered a measure of peace he had not known in decades. The neighborhood soon hosted a wedding. Residents sought William's help in organizing it. With characteristic efficiency, he agreed. Event management, for him, was second nature, a skill honed in a different arena, now applied quietly to civilian life. The wedding went smoothly, attendees unaware of the precision behind the planning. Compliments and gratitude were exchanged, all without revealing the depth of his true capabilities. As the story neared its conclusion, the contrast was clear. Sir Edward Whitmore's real identity had been unveiled to those investigating him, yet he himself had vanished, replaced by William Thompson. A new identity, a new city, and a life free from scrutiny, yet his skills, knowledge, and experiences remained intact, ready to be used should circumstances demand. Nightmares and memories were unavoidable, but they also reminded him that vigilance never truly ceased. Perhaps one day, those abilities would be called upon again. The ordinary world might never see the danger he could neutralize. Yet when the moment came, he would act with the same professionalism that had confounded assassins, security teams, and journalists alike. This is the reality of true heroes. Lives lived quietly, unobserved, yet defined by readiness, resilience, and skill. They vanish into daily life, emerging only when necessary, leaving others to marvel at what seems impossible. Sir Edward Whitmore no longer existed. William Thompson had become the public persona, a man shaped by extraordinary experience, yet cloaked in normalcy. The transformation had brought him freedom, safety, and a measure of peace, even if the past could never be fully forgotten. The assassination night had altered everything. He could no longer protect the myth of Sir Edward Whitmore, but in doing so, he had gained something perhaps more valuable: control over his life and identity. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and mention which city you're watching from. Life's most extraordinary stories are still being written, and the most unassuming people may carry the most incredible experiences.